Hi, I'm Simon Kolker. I'm going to be talking about uncertain machine ethics planning. So one of the goals of machine ethics is to integrate ethical behavior into autonomous decision making. One approach is to take moral theories or values from philosophy and integrate them into autonomous systems. But this can be a challenge due to outcome uncertainty. Philosophy has had very little to say historically about probability or non-determinism. There's also moral uncertainty. So there are lots of different moral theories. There's no one moral theory to rule them all, and different stakeholders may have different preferences over moral theories, which is important because we want to be expressive to the public or system owners. We also want to remain practical, right? But we've got to remember the reason why the system was implemented in the first place. And however we do this, we want to remain explainable and transparent. So a while ago, we introduced this idea of machine ethics hypothetical retrospection, which is based off this idea that we ought to imagine our retrospections from the major foreseeable outcomes of our decisions, given the information available at decision time. We formalized this with a simple augmentation procedure for machine ethics. In this paper, we adapt and formalize that for probabilistic planning. So we have a little running example here. We have Hal, who is a diabetic who, through no fault of his own, has lost his insulin supply. He needs some urgently to stay alive. His neighbor Carla has some, so is Hal justified in taking the insulin? We can see that there are different outcomes here that may result in relief or regret, regret being negative retrospection, we term it. And so if Hal, for example, steals the insulin but it doesn't work, then he may regret having broken the law unnecessarily. We model this as a multi-moral Markov decision process with the standard components plus moral theories, considerations, and a weak lexicographic ranking over the moral theories. We're going to start here with the moral considerations, and these are represented like objectives in multi-objective planning. So each consideration has a space of morally relevant information or moral worth. There is a judgment function which extracts worth from a state action transition, and we also have an aggregation function. For example, we have the moral theory of utilitarianism and the moral consideration of utility. So we have worth as a set of real numbers, a judgment function, and a expected utility. For the theory of absolute deontology, we have the measure of a duty violation, so worth being whether or not there's a violation, and then if there's any probability of a violation, we say the expected worth is that there will be a violation. And so we shorten this in the paper to a state action function, and this allows us to use multi-objective heuristic dynamic programming to find the set of all Pareto undominated policies. We extract the histories or trajectories from each policy and then feed that into machine ethics hypothetical retrospection. So we have a little augmentation graph on the side here. This argument is in support of policy 1 from the perspective of H1. We generate arguments for all policies and histories, and then we generate attacks between them based on two critical questions. Did the target history violate a moral theory that the source did not? And did the target policy have a greater expectation of violating that theory? So for the lost insulin example, we have an augmentation graph here. The policy with minimal negative retrospection over supporting arguments and moral theories is selected. So we sum the probability of attacked arguments in support of each history. So we have a weighting policy here where Hal stays at home. We have a policy where Hal steals the insulin. As we can see, Hal always ends up stealing, so there's complete non-acceptability. And Hal might survive if he stays at home, and so this argument isn't attacked. Therefore, we have that there is less non-acceptability on the weighting policy, and so it is preferred. There's a smaller probability that it's attacked. There is much more to cover. We can have a weak lexicographic ranking over the moral theories. We can also have a multi-moral stochastic shortest path problem, so we have a fixed budget, and we find the most ethical policy within that budget, which also reaches a goal state. However, there may be an exponential number of histories for each policy, which would lead to exponential time and space complexity for our algorithm. We do have results for an expanded version of the lost insulin example, though it doesn't really show this exponential behavior. We still need to look into that. Either way, we want to look at performance improvements, maybe approximation methods. We want to build a counterfactual explanation system, so you can interrogate a solution policy and say why, by hypothetical retrospection, was this chosen. We want to implement more moral theories, more case studies, and that is everything I have to say. Thank you.